Hi friends, this is the math lesson for second grade. This is Unit 6, Lesson 12. So we are going to take a little break from addition and subtraction, and we are going to practice rounding. So please make sure that if you haven't already done so, go watch the Brain Pop video called Rounding and use that as a little bit of a review. If you remember from last time, when we did rounding, we rounded to the nearest 10. So we were dealing with decade numbers, 260, 350, 70, 90, 50, 10. All those decade numbers that you count by tens to get to. However, this time, instead of rounding to the nearest 10, you can see at the top of page 289 that we are rounding to the nearest 100. So instead of choosing which decade number our number is closest to, you are going to choose what hundreds number our number is closest to. So we're going to go through the same steps, but in this blue box, this gives you the steps that you should follow. Now, if you recall, don't love using these boxes, sticks, and circles because I don't think they necessarily help. So if you have your hundreds chart handy, I would pause the video and grab this because this to me is much more helpful. So when we round to the nearest 100, we're going to start by underlining our hundreds place, our hundreds town. That is a number that is going to be potentially changing. Then it wants you to write the 100 that you would get to if you would go above or below. So right here, so they underlined the 2. I'm sorry if you couldn't see that before. They wrote the 100 above, so 300. If you were to count 299, then 300, or below 200. So remember, my little trick for this is when you have the one that goes up, it changes, you just add 1, and the one that goes down stays the same. Do you see 2 and 2? Then they suggest drawing the number, and just like if we had more than 5 or more ones, we round it up. Remember this, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We round it up, and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we rounded down. So same thing here, except instead of looking at our ones, we are going to look at our tens. So if there are 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 tens, we would round up to 300. And if there are 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 tens, we would round down to 200. So in this case, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tens, so we would round up. So let's go ahead and practice. That's going to be the best way for you to get more comfortable with rounding. So do a few with me, and then I'll give you the opportunity to do some on your own if you would like. So we want to underline the hundreds number in each of our problems. So I just went ahead and did that. You can do that too. Then we're going to write each of the hundreds numbers. So as you recall, the one that is below stays the same. So instead of, I'm just going to keep my hundreds the same, and I'm going to add the double 0. So keep my hundreds the same. So I have a 1, 0, 0. Okay. And then for the one above, I just go up from 1 and I write 2, 0, 0. So why don't you go ahead and go through and do that for each one of these problems. So write your lower one, keeping the hundreds number the same, and your higher one, adding 1 to the hundreds number. All right, if you need more time doing that, go ahead and pause the video. Now, I want you to go through and I want you to circle each of the tens numbers because that is going to be the number that tells us what to do. And remember, if it is a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, you round down. And a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, and a 9, you round up. All right, so if I have a 1 in my tens town, that tells me that I'm going to round down and my number is closer to 100. Now, I asked you to grab your hundreds chart if you wanted to. And if you have a whiteboard marker, this is where you can use it. So I want you to draw a line between the 50s and the 40s. And then you're going to draw it going up like this. So basically, if your number is in this bottom half, now make sure you include 50, then you're going to round up. And if it's in this top half, you're going to round down. So for the one that we just did, 112, I see 12 right there. So that tells me that I'm going to round down, which is kind of confusing because this looks up, down to the to the 100. Now you have to be very careful right here because if it is a hundreds number, then it is already rounded. All right, so use the chart if it helps you. Let's go on to the next one. So on number 2, I see 283. If I look on my hundreds chart, I see 83 is in the bottom half. So that is where I round up. And I might actually do some arrows just to help me because it might be a little confusing. So 83 is going to round up. So I know I choose 300. If you are ready to try these on your own, I do encourage you to do so. If you want to stick with me for a couple more minutes, that is fine as well. So I have 242. I know my 4 rounds down, so I get 200. 439. I know my 3 rounds down, so I get 400. Now what I would like you to do is pause the video and do number 5 and 6 on your own. Okay, friends, let's see how you did. So I have a 6 in my tens town. So that means I'm going to round up to 700. And a 5 in my tens town, I also round up. So I get 600 right there. All right, good job so far. Things are about to get just a little more complicated. All right, do you remember these problems? I know they can be kind of tricky. We're gonna walk through the same steps. And this is where your hundreds chart might even come in more handy. So we have to round each number, then add or subtract, then choose the correct answer. So what I want you to do first is I want you to draw little arrows to the side after each number. That gives us a space to put our rounding. Now, if you are feeling very confident in rounding, you can go through and do 7 through 12 on your own, and then check back in a little bit to check your answers. If you're not quite ready, totally fine. Stay with me and we will work on it. So on the first one, I have the number 214. Remember, this guy is going to tell me all of my rounding needs, that tens town. So if I have a 1 in tens town, as a reminder, we have, I like to write this on pretty much every page when I do rounding. It's like my little cheat sheet, but it's not cheating because it's my information. So 214, if I have a 1, or if I look at the 14, I know it's rounding down. So 214 rounded down. When I round down, remember my hundreds count stays the same. So I'm going to write 200. And now here I have a 2 in the tens place. So that also tells me that I'm rounding down. Or I can look at my hundreds chart and I see 24. That rounds down. Again, when I round down, my hundreds stays the same. So I have 100. When I add 200 plus 100, you can write the answer right there, or you can be so smart and you just know that it is 300 because 2 plus 1 is 3, and add your double zeros. Now, if you're ready to finish on your own, go ahead. Don't forget these ones down here are subtraction. So I have 380. 8 tells me that I'm going to round up. So when I round up, that is when my hundreds count changes. So instead of being 300, I'm going to change it to 400. Then I have a 3 in my tens town. 3 rounds down. When I round down, my hundred stays the same. So I have 400 plus 200 now. So I get 600. We are going to skip number 9 for a minute, and we're going to go on to number 10. We're going to switch to subtraction. At the very end, you're going to do 9 and 12 on your own. So we have 6, 23, and 2, 21. I'm going to go through and I'm going to circle all of those tens towns because that tells me that is the number that I am looking at. Okay, so a 2, 2's round down. I can also find 23 and 21 on my chart. They both round down. So both of my hundreds towns are going to stay the same. So I have 600 minus 200. So that gives me an answer of 400. Now I have a 6 and a 7. So I know my 6, rounds up. My 7 rounds up. So both of these hundreds towns are going to change this time. My 8 changes to a 9. And my 3 changes to a 4. So 900 minus 400 equals 500. All right, it is time for you guys to try these last 2 on your own. Go through the same steps that we have been doing and give it your best shot. Please pause the video. All right, how'd you do? Okay, so we have a 6 and a 7 in our tens town here. I know that a 6 rounds up and a 7 rounds up. So both of my hundreds towns are changing. So now I have 500 plus 200, and I get an answer of 700. And then on number 12, I have an 8, which rounds up. So I know my hundreds town is changing. And a 3 that rounds down. So my hundreds town is not changing, so 1 of each. 5 minus 2 gives me an answer of 3 plus those double zeros, so you get 300. All right, last little bit. We have some word problems to do, and we are going to use rounding to solve these problems. So it says Warren scored 411 points in the first game and 385 points in the second game. Round each number to the nearest 100. About how many points did Warren score all together? So when we see the word all together, we know that we are adding. So what we first need to do is write our problem down just as it would be normal. And when you are ready, add those arrows to the side. We know that we are going to be looking at our tens town to see how we round. And now that we can't see my other thing, I'm going to write it right here. Okay, so a 1 rounds down. So that means my hundredths count is going to stay the same. And an 8 rounds up. So my hundredths count is going to change, go up by 1. And then I can add 400 plus 400. And I get a total of 800. So our answer is about 800 points right there. And our last bit here, Robin had 630 coins in her collection. She gave 198 coins to her brother. Round each number to the nearest 100. About how many coins does Robin have now? So here we are going to be subtracting because she gives some away. So please first write down your problem as it is. Then draw your 2 little arrows. So we have, we want to circle our tens down. So I know if I have a 3 is going to round down. So my hundredths stays the same. And then I have 198. A 9 rounds up. So that gives me a 200. And if you think about it, 198 is very close to 200, right? So when you subtract both of those, you get 400. So about 400, and our label is coins. All right, my friends, we will continue to practice rounding in small groups, and that is it for today's recording. We'll see you later.